Indigo is a company that's based out of Boston, Massachusetts. We started there in 2014. We're about 5 years old. We're the direct output of a company that was being started to address the microbiome of human beings and attack the disease C. diff. As a result of that, the scientists that started our company said the same thing might be going on in plants and started our company, Indigo. In 2014, we started the company with about 14 people. Today, we have over 900. Our commercial headquarters for the United States is in Memphis. 3.5 years ago, we had 1 person here. Today, we have over 300, and we're hoping to head to 700 over the next couple of years. We're focused on 3 things as a company. Number 1, grower profitability. Number 2, doing it in a sustainable way. And number 3, creating a foodstuff for humans that's better for them. And we see opportunities to make money in all 3 of those. We're focused on the entire ag space, on both systems and products. That space is about $3.2 trillion around the world. It's big enough for a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunities for growers to make more money, and we're focused on it in all 3 of those categories. Farmers are actually at a time when prices are actually at a historic level as compared to the last 30 years, and yet our profitability is really constrained. And so we're focused on how we can help there, both from producing more with less stuff and creating new businesses along the way. So with that, I look forward to the conversation with the others.
Nutrien is a highly integrated agricultural inputs provider. We're back integrated in the production of nitrogen, the mining of potash and phosphate, and would be one of the world's largest producers of commodity nutritional products. I want to say that, Barry, I might use a few more minutes than you did, but I want to tell you how pleased I am to be here this afternoon. It's not very often that I get to come to a function like this around agriculture that's literally in my backyard. I like Barry, live here in Memphis, and normally when I get to speak before a group like this, it's either in New York or Toronto or on the West Coast. So I'm tickled to death to have each of you in our great city of Memphis. I grew up about 2 hours south of here in the Mississippi Delta on a farm in Cleveland, Mississippi. And I want to speak a few minutes around innovation and agriculture. I might make a big loop here in my discussions, and then we can get more into it once we get in the panel. But as I look at our industry today, I like to say that we're in the very early innings of an exciting time in agriculture. And you kind of got to take yourself out of the moment right now and some of the things and challenges we face at this very moment and look ahead when I make those types of comments, and especially as it relates to advancements in digital technology and innovation. If we allow ourselves to look ahead 30 years, and most all of you in this room have heard this before, that in the next 30 years we'll have to feed an additional 2 billion people. We're at 8 billion today. We're going to need to feed 10 billion in 30 years. And this is going to require about a 50% increase in production from the levels that we're at today. And our industry has seen many step changes over the last 75 years, but these step changes have been things like mechanization on the farm, widespread adoption of fertilizer, blended fertilizers, variable rate fertilizers on it, adoption of biotech and seed traits, and we've seen some increases in arable land. Now, having worked across most of the major ag producing areas of the globe, I can tell you that there's still some low-hanging fruit in some of the developing countries as it relates to production and yield. But that's not going to make the gap up that we need to make up in agricultural production for the next 30 years out on it. And, you know, our industry will be challenged. And when I say our industry, I'm talking about manufacturers, I'm talking about retailers, and obviously I'm talking about producers. We're going to have to achieve higher yields. We're going to have to do it with less environmental impact, and we're going to have to do it with an eye toward consumer preferences regarding what we put on our crops, and those crops, once they go to the table, our consumers want to know more about that. And this is where I believe that digital technology and data services will provide a huge benefit and a critical role in our industry. And I think it'll drive the next wave of productivity gains like we saw in the past 75 years with some of the other things that I mentioned. Agriculture is going through huge changes right now, and I think we'll continue to see big changes over the next 5 to 10 years. Today, we see advancements in cloud computing, artificial intelligence, imagery, and remote sensing. And this technology is very important because it's led to rapid advancements that allow us to diagnose the health of a crop down to an individual plant and in real time. And if some of you, I walked a little bit earlier into the room where the displays were, and you're seeing a lot of that technology showcased in there today. And one thing this technology does is it allows our agronomists and producers out there to better understand their fields and drive their actions sooner. And that's key right there, driving actions sooner. These actions lead to profit maximization and yield on every acre of land and every individual acre of land. And that's what's amazing about the technology that we have. I think this innovation will be the driving force behind additional productivity that's needed to feed a global economy. But I want to caution this. Pulling all this technology and innovation together in a platform that is simple and scalable is a challenge. And as a matter of fact, there's no single platform out there today that does it all. At Nutrien, we have the products, we have the services, and we have the technology that our customers require. As well, and I put emphasis on as well, we have an army of 3,500 agronomists to deploy them. When I look at a lot of the technology that's out there today, one of the major gaps in getting that technology out is people don't have the army of agronomists to deploy that technology through the channel and to the end user, the grower. I think that's what makes us unique in what we do. And so with that, I'm interested to sit down and have a panel discussion with my old friend Barry Knight and talk about this a little bit more. Thank you.
Guys, good intros, good discussions.
Thank you.
Some things big have happened, as you mentioned, Jeff, in the last couple of months, last couple of years, frankly, on the input side. You know, so from an M&A standpoint, we've seen the big consolidation across farms. We're seeing it across input suppliers. We're seeing in the retail channel. We're seeing a lot of different places consolidation. In your perspectives, your different businesses, why do you see this happening? What's driving that kind of transaction volume?
Well, I think first and foremost, what normally drives it is efficiency, and trying to take cost out of the business for the most part. You know, if you look at where this roll-up started, it actually started at the farm gate. We've seen massive consolidation in our customer base across the farm base, and that roll-up was brought on for numerous reasons. A lot of things because biotech and trait packages made some things easier, but it also made a farm much more efficient, made more efficient use of their equipment and such. If you look at the, I don't know if you call them today, the big three or the big five on the manufacturing side of things, those guys as well are looking for more efficiency. But what really drove it on the manufacturing side, in my opinion, is the seed and trait side of things. Today, if you look at the big guys that are left out there, each one of them have a platform now with seed and technology. And on the retail side of it, we're no different than anybody else. We're looking for efficiency, and we're looking for a way to better serve our customers as they grow in size as well.
So we've seen this consolidation in digital and technology. You mentioned platforms of seed and crop protection, but we've also got digital platforms out there as well. You know, how do you see those impacting growers going down the line?
You know, Jeff said this in his opening statement, that there's not a product out there that does everything. And on the human side, we had MRIs in the last number of years, CAT scans. We have empowered doctors to be able to look deep into a system. And I would suggest that we're nowhere close in ag presently. And so we've got a stethoscope, and we've got a few other tools to help measure what's going on. But that's where the opportunity is. Clearly, soils have the potential to produce a lot of what plants need. but you've got to understand what their health is and have the tools to help you understand that. So many in the industry are working on tools to inform agronomists to make better decisions. But I do think that that's where a lot of the value is going to be created through efficiency, a lot of the value through maximized profitability, not necessarily yields, and creating crops that are better for humans.
Yeah, so on the ag tech, we're seeing spending levels, they just keep going up every year.
Yep.
Right, we saw $15–16 billion last year in the venture capital communities. Ag tech spending keeps going up, but it doesn't necessarily seem like farmer adoption is going up at pace with it. You know, I mean, you know, what's it gonna take for farmers to really latch on to technology? I mean, farm profit's part of it, but is that the magic bullet? Farmers make more money, they'll adopt technology faster? What are you guys seeing?
Well, it depends on what you identify as latching on to technology. I could make the argument I spent last week in Western Canada, and if I looked at the equipment that those guys were deploying last week, 76-foot drills, 2 to 3 of them in a field, they were all linked by satellite. Basically, once the tractors entered the field, no one on that tractor ever touched the steering wheel with it, and those 3 could work simultaneously in a field together. So I think that growers are latching on to technology probably a lot more than we think. It doesn't ever move at the speed that the industry, and particularly if you're in the tech industry, it maybe doesn't move at the speed that you want it to. But I'll say this, I think that in a lot of cases, and not just growers, but retailers as well, there's a lot of confusion out there because everybody's coming at it from a different direction with it. And everybody, you know, we're no different. Everybody thinks their platform is the best out there. And when we don't work together and build something in unison that you can plug and play, we hold it up ourselves, in my opinion, with it. And so, you know, that's one of the roles when I talked about the emphasis of an agronomist. You'll never take the human element out of agriculture. There'll always be the need, but what we'll do is we'll make our growers and our agronomists where they can make better decisions, they can make quicker decisions, and take some risk out of that decision making because of the information we're able to feed back to them. So I actually think we're making pretty good advancements in technology, and like I said, I think the next 5 to 10 years, Barry, you probably agree, we're going to see a lot more.
Yeah, so when you think of, as Jeff said, when you put this into boxes, what rate are they adopting mechanical innovations? It's really quick. When you think about the innovation curve or adoption curve around biotech, it was really, really quick. And so where farmers see value, they adopt pretty quick. I think the days of taking 15 years to adopt technology is gone. I think what you're suggesting maybe is that the innovation that we've created so far in the digital space isn't bringing the value that the growers hope for. And so there's probably a big opportunity there for us as an industry to create those tools.
Yeah, and we also see that farmers just don't have that much discretionary capital to spend either in this current environment. You know, you got to be really crisp, really smart, really believable with your value proposition, probably now more than ever. So in some cases, people say the farm profit thing on one side stifling kind of the adoption rate, and on the other side, people are saying it's really fostering a really innovative cycle. I mean, what's your perspectives on that continuum?
Well, you know, agriculture and producers and retailers are all just like general society, and Barry was talking about. You've got early adapters that take off really quick with it. You got those that want to sit back and watch the early adapters, and then you got those that don't believe it's going to change at all, and that group probably won't be around for that next phase in 10 to 15 years. But I think that the early adapters are moving very quickly because they do see the efficiency in it. They see that they're removing some risk by using these analytics and things like that, and new products and such with it. So I think that's, you know, it's what's always driven. It's the same thing when I talked about mechanization changes on the farm. You know, you had guys that had mechanical pickers, and you had guys that were still hand picking cotton 75 years ago. And so you know, you have your early adapters and you prove it out, and then the market moves there.
You know, one of the things that we're seeing now are farms that are constrained on available capital for them to use, they do innovate. And so within 2 hours of Memphis, Tennessee toward Little Rock, there's a farmer that farms about 10,000 acres, and he's moved to completely regenerative ag. And it was completely an economic reason. And so he rents 100% of his land, and so it's not about him taking care of his own property, he's taking care of his back pocket. How do I make more money? He's reduced inputs, he's reduced equipment size, and he has been able to go to some crops that are different, and he's making more money there. So I do think that this time is a time of innovation and not from innovation.
Yeah. So let's go back to the consolidation conversation for a second. You know, we see, you know, the business models from selling bags and jugs to from, you know, maybe still largely our business to now starting to bundle some things, now potentially creating some outcome-based relationships with growers, you know, and with grower intimacy being kind of the core of that, you know, kind of opportunity. Where do you see the business model changes across the grower landscape from input suppliers to distributors, retailers, and growers?
Barry, you want to take a crack first?
So as some of the previous speakers talked about today, the consumers want something different. And in many cases, they're not able to get it. And I'll give you the example of wheat. Indigo got involved in wheat in Kansas in the fall of 17, and we had farmers produce about 60,000 acres for us. And they stored it on farm. And so we had on farm, we had products that were by variety. It was called Monument, for example, and it may have had a protein of 12%. As long as we kept that segregated, we had created value, but we couldn't take it to a single point and mix it with 8% protein or 10%. Each one of those protein categories had a premium. There were markets that wanted 8% protein Monument wheat. And so it forced us to consider a different channel, to your point. Directly from the farm to the mill or directly from the farm to the brewery. And our experience is we see more of that. And it's a consumer demand. Today, if you go into Kroger in Memphis, Tennessee, you can buy eggs for 88 cents a dozen or $4.99. And that's not overwhelming, right? The difference between 88 cents and $4.99, except that there's 70 billion eggs created laid in the United States every year, which is over 6 billion dozen. And if you just average between 88 cents and $5.99 and put $2 on there, that's 12 billion in new value created because somebody wanted something different. And I think that's bigger than the U.S. ag, chemical, and seed business, just in $2 on eggs. So there's big opportunity for innovation around how something is produced.
Yeah, great perspective.
You know, when I look at outcome-based pricing, it seems to be a key word today. There are a lot of manufacturers out there that are we're working with them on a trial basis with it. You know, my question on it is that just another pricing mechanism, or what really interests me, and I think what really interests our producers and our customers, is more like outcome-based ROI, return on investment. And when, you know, and I think outcome-based pricing, I mean, it does a couple of things. So if you're primarily, for those in the room that aren't familiar, there's a lot of work being done with seed today, corn seed, cotton seed as well, with it. But that's one component of what that grower uses on that acre to produce a crop. And sometimes we'll add fungicides to it or so. But I think what's really going to interest the producer and the consumer as well is the whole piece. And when I say outcome-based ROI or outcome-based solution, that's everything it takes to produce that crop. Let's bundle that together with a desired result. I like it from a perspective. It de-risks some things for the grower. We talked about that just a minute backstage. With all this wet weather today, that it could look very good for some growers sitting here right now at a point in time with it. But I think where this thing will eventually evolve is it'll eventually evolve into an outcome-based ROI and an outcome-based solution. And just think about this. We would not have even been able to have this discussion 5 years ago But because of the technology today and because of the way we can track information today, that's one of the offsets. That's one of the benefits that's come out of technology and innovation. Barry, you and I know we worked in the industry for a long time. We dreamed of these types of things, but we didn't have the tools to put them in place.
Yeah, and the move towards outcome-based ROI, it starts to create that platform, and you start to circle everything around that platform, and growers can ask the question, which platform do I want to be on? And the analogy we talk about a lot is, you think about buying cell phones 15 years ago. Before you walked out the door, you asked, do I want a flip phone, do I want a camera, do I want this, and this? Today, you ask, do I want to be on iOS or Android?
That's right.
And then you make that actual purchase decision on features and functionality actually at the store. Do you see that kind of evolution in this industry?
So a couple of things. I think that there will be parts of ag that go to cost plus, this outcome based, and that exists today on some crops. There are many farmers that says, hey, if I knew I could make 10%, revenue, I'm all about that. I also think that there are other places on the farm that they're going to be making money with that are outside what we're talking about today, just the commodity. Consumers are willing to pay for how chickens are raised, and it's different than just the egg in the last example. And so how these crops are raised is I think, as we heard of the previous, people will pay a lot for organic, and that's a proxy for how something is raised. And I see that how things are raised may provide much of the innovation and much of the value creation that we'll see here in the next couple of years.
And I think in regards to the platform that you were asking about, is that there will have to be plug and play. So if we want this thing to be, if we want it to take off the way most people in the industry think we want it to take off, and if we think that it bears the return that a lot of people think it bears, if we really want to move this thing at a step change, then we'll have to have platforms that can interact with each other. I know at Nutrien, our platform, our precision platform, our digital platform, we don't have all the pieces. We've got some major pieces to it, but we don't have all the pieces. But yet we go out and we plug and play. We might play with Bayer on a couple of pieces, and we might go out and play with Syngenta on a couple of pieces, or with a couple of technology companies. We might add some components to it. But I go back to what I said 20 minutes ago. Nobody out there has a complete platform, and if they say they do, they're not representing the truth on it. We've looked and we've searched to try to find that, and again, I think that as an industry, we owe it to the customers to build that type of platform where you can plug and play in it, and everybody can have access to it.
Yeah, that's great. Barry, you mentioned the consumers. We heard a little bit this morning about consumer preferences and changes, and the concept of kind of hyper segmentation. It's no longer just baby boomers and X and so forth. If we look at the grocery store, hanging at the perimeter is a pretty good place to be. We're seeing some growth rates there on the fresh veggies, fresh meats and so forth, dairy. But at the center of the store has been challenged. From a producer standpoint, how do you view the impact of that kind of push to the perimeter?
So I would agree that the center of the store is a challenge, and the people that are producing those products in that category don't have a lot of choice today. And so if you're buying wheat, you're buying wheat. It's not segregated. I use the example all the time. If you're in the cattle business and all your cows were turned into hamburger, you wouldn't have the opportunity to sell a steak or anything else. That's what's going on in corn, soy, and wheat. The first thing that we need to do is de-commoditize the big commodities. Is that possible? Of course it's possible. There was a time where they just chopped up beef, without making USDA choice and the varieties. If a feeder today that's feeding chickens or hogs had the choice of low aflatoxin corn, they would buy it. It just doesn't exist in the marketplace. And so one of our challenges as an industry in the beginning is to de-commoditize. And then in that decommoditization, there's going to be how a soybean is produced. The consumer is going to want to put in a box of oil or something else. Given the choices, consumers will make a decision.
Yeah. Well, the other aspect too is consumers want fresh, they don't want preservatives, they don't want this, and we can all say that because we're all consumers, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, at the same time, that means you're sitting in Minneapolis, you don't get fresh apples in January. You know, so there are some trade-offs to this as well. As those preferences change and all those dynamics change, can production keep pace?
First of all, I don't think it has any choice, and I think those preferences won't change any faster than we can provide the food. I don't see anybody going hungry over it. You know, when I look at this piece of it, I kind of look at where I see that pressure coming from, and there's two distinct consumer groups that are putting pressure on the growers today. Number one, that's retail food purchasers out there. That tends to be a bit younger group. They see value in sustainability, they see value in traceability on it, and the other group that I see out there that puts a lot of pressure on that is the investors. And these investors put a lot of pressure on their corporations to act more responsible from an environmental standpoint, and more social equality. And those things won't go away. But, you know, through time, we've always had pressure in agriculture. The thing that's disappointing about it to me is that we haven't found a way for the grower to capitalize on that. And what ends up happening on these type deals, and I've watched this, I've been in business for 35 years now. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, Barry, but people looking at us think they can tell that. But the thing, you know, the thing I look at is these things end up becoming table stakes. So you might not get any more value for your goods, but if you don't do that, you're going to get less value for the goods. I would love to see a way where our producers can capitalize on this and be able to capture some value out of it. And we'd like to be able to capture some value, very just as you guys would on that.
If you've ridden a combine ever, and it has a yield monitor on it, you go across that field and you see some parts of the field that are producing 360 bushel or 400, and some of the parts are 100 bushel. And so with the science that we're coming forward with, just getting the average of the field up, we have the genetics and we have the technology today to feed the world. I'm not worried about that. The American corn, or National Corn Grower winner every year has yields above 400, and I think our average in the United States is around 170 or something like that. So we know what the frontier is, and we know that we can do that in the United States. That's twofold on production that we can do. I think our challenges are more around what are we going to do environmentally, you know? How are we going to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere while we're doing that 400 bushel? How are we going to keep soil out of the Mississippi River? How are we going to keep nitrogen out of the Gulf of Mexico? Those are the things I think about.
Yeah. Well, it's also, you know, Jeff, you talk about how do growers make money in this conundrum, right? And you think about it, if big food's sitting there, does big food start to get local? Does big food, and I mean big food when I think of manufacturers, I think about the big retailers, big box, small box. Do they develop a different relationship with growers that put small food inside big stores?
Yeah.
I mean, do you see that happening anytime soon?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's clear that consumers want to buy local. The beer industry is probably the biggest example of that. There's probably not even a medium-sized town that doesn't have its own brewery. That's completely different than 25 years ago when there were 3 or 4 beer companies in the U.S. We see it across the board, to be very candid. People want to buy local.
I think it's, you know, on the agriculture side of it, you know, we've seen it much quicker in the beef and swine side of things. I know if I go to dinner in Collierville at one of my favorite restaurants, they'll tell you where they're purchasing their beef from.
Yep.
On a local basis. We're not there yet on your commodity type products like corn and soybeans and cotton and rice and wheat. I think, you know, over time we'll get there on that piece of it. But it is you're definitely seeing a value grab there.
That's right.
They're extracting more.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did a project in Italy with some wine growers, and we essentially put a blockchain, you know, capability in place where you could scan the bottle and tell you which winery it came from, which, you know, vineyard, how it was treated, the family values, and, I mean, it was a little bit of a novelty, but it ended up being so popular, it's kind of trying to roll out more and more, and we think that has some potential to even kind of hit different parts, whether it's beef or produce or what have you, but, so I'm gonna guess that neither one of you would claim to be a technologist, am I fair?
I think Jeff is.
Well, you know, I thought about this before I came on stage today. I said, I'm going to talk to this group about innovation and technology. And in full discovery here, I'm going to show you my notes. And last night I was sitting at the bar writing these notes and taking Scotch tape and putting it on my folder. And my 14-year-old daughter walked up and said, "What are you doing, Dad?" And I said, "Well, I'm putting some notes together for a presentation tomorrow." She goes, "Why don't you just put them on your phone?" And I said, "Well, it's rude to look down at your phone on it." But no, you know, look, we've come through this. We've come through the last 30 or 40 years, Barry and I, and we've seen a lot of technology. Barry, if I think back, we saw the imidiazolines and ons at the time, the sulfonylureas on the chemistry side, and we thought that was benchmark breakthrough technology, and it was at that time. And then we saw traits. I can remember 1997, I think, was the first year I saw BT cotton in North Louisiana. And being in the retail business, I thought it was going to put us out of business because we were making 13 applications a year sometimes for insecticides and such. So you know, you just kind of ride the wave to the next wave. And Barry and I talked outside a little earlier. You know, it won't be too many more years down the road before we'll have to hand the cleats to somebody a lot younger, because this technology is changing so rapidly right now. And I you know, last week when I was in Canada traveling with our team, we had a lot of young interns we were putting on for the summer, and man, they were just soaking up our digital platform. And our Echelon is our precision ag platform. And they were just soaking it up. I mean, as fast as and it wasn't fast enough. And then I looked at some of our more seasoned people in it, and some of those were putting the brakes on it and wait just a minute here on it. So I think and I'm talking too much on that piece of it, but that's the interesting part of this piece is I think this innovation in technology is actually going to bring some young people back to the farm. Barry, I don't know what you think about that.
I think we're on the verge of a next wave of innovation. I think the things that we've been doing broadly in agriculture over all acres, I think that's really short, including weed control and nutrient. So at Indigo, we work with small startups all over the world, and some of the technology we're seeing that it's just incredible. Weed control with small drones that are ground driven. So I think it's exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I joke with you not being a technologist, but I guarantee you're going to have an answer to this. But what technology do you think is the most exciting over the next 5-10 years? Which one gets you most excited? And you only get one.
The microbiome.
I'm probably in that boat as well, and then I'm always looking for any technology. Our best agronomists out there today, their only holdback is they can't get around fast enough, and they can't call on more people. And so I think with a lot of our satellite imagery, a lot of our drone activity and those type things, we're going to be able to take our best and spread them out on more acres, and that excites me a lot from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's great. It's funny you talk about your interns. We 250,000 people worldwide, right? And our median age is 28. So deal with a lot of people that are far younger than I am, you know. Yeah. But so ask for a couple closing comments, and then let's turn to the audience. But you know, the one thing, and you touched on it a little bit, Barry, and often ag and health are kind of compared to each other. And you know, we kind of think about, you can't really talk about health without talking about healthcare. Yeah. You can't talk about healthcare anymore without talking about food, and you can't talk about food without talking about ag. You know, these things are completely linked together, and when food becomes a prescription, we got a whole new ball game. But maybe a couple closing comments from both of you, then let's turn to the audience.
Can I go from there?
You can do anything you want, Barry.
So I'm going to talk about Mississippi where Jeff and I.
We're going to talk about baseball? Yeah,
we're going to talk about baseball for just a few minutes. So when you think about health in Mississippi, Mississippi currently spending about $4.7 billion on Medicaid per year. On Medicare, 5.2 billion per year. The state budget of Mississippi is only 7 billion. So we're spending more on health care than the whole state's spending. And to your point, it's a function of what we're eating in Mississippi. And the innovation, one of the innovations that we're working on is, can we work with public officials to, instead of the first thing you prescribe is a drug, can it be a diet? And how can we work with local farmers to produce that local food for a local restaurant? One of the most exciting things we're working on.
That's great.
Yeah, and I would close in saying, and Barry, those are great, and both of us know that state well and know a lot of the things that we need to work on there. I think, you know, when I look at Nutrien Ag Solutions and things that we want to do out there and the things we want to accomplish, you know, sustainability is big to us today. I think that we definitely want to care for our planet, and I definitely think that we want to help our growers as well as ourselves in leaving this planet in a lot better condition than what we grabbed it as. And so I think those things are really critical, and they're critical to the non-farm sector. And how we look to the non-farm sector. We look today, there are not a lot of people represented in our general population that came from a farm anymore.
That's right.
And including my kids.
Yeah.
I'm one generation removed. I had the luxury of growing up on a farm, but my kids did not. And they think differently than I do. And I think as an industry, we have to take more responsibility, whether it's health,
Yep.
or whether it's environmental impact and such. And I know that's very important to me, and I want to play a part in that.
Yep, well, good, and thanks for letting me join new Tennessee guy, join a couple long-term, and I'm gonna go Vandy baseball, you guys can go Mississippi State, so that's
We'll
what
take
I'm putting my money on, so.
We'll take it.
How about we take a pause and open to the audience?
We're talking about de-commoditizing commodities. In the world we live in, especially the big crops, the grains and the oilseed crops, how do you go about managing risk, your price risk, your weather risk, and your political risk? And just in the background of all that is, you know, we've got political risk being played out over Canada at the moment, China, the oilseeds, we've got volatility in the price, and we've got the farm program, and then the farm loan program. How can you, in a large-scale enterprise with large-scale deliveries, manage all that outside the program, or can you manage it inside the program?
Thank you. That sounds like a daunting problem. And so I'll just start in the beginning. And so one of the things that the U.S. has moved toward is a lot of on-farm storage. But before you can build that, if you had an idea through a marketplace of where that was going, to your point, you've already pre-sold it. You can build it and understand the logistics to get it there. So that's one of the things we're working on. Before you built it, have it sold. And so in the American seed business, it's no different. And so on the seed side, Jeff's company or Monsanto, they literally speculate on how much seed they're going to build for the next year. If they knew you were going to buy corn seed, there's a huge efficiency that could be created there because they're not taking the risks. And so the idea of creating a marketplace where there's transparency, where they know that in Japan, once a specific bean delivered at a specific price, the Japanese don't know that they could do that today. So that's one of the first things we're working on is that marketplace and a transparency. Currently in our marketplace that we have at Indigo, there's no fee. If you have the grain and Japan wants the grain, you just transact and there's no fee. With that idea of how do we create that efficiency around knowledge of what was produced where, the second part of that on-farm storage is how do we understand the quality at your farm? And so we're building and working with actually innovators around the world to understand it specifically what's in that, how much aflatoxin is on there, what's the protein, what's the carbohydrate, what's the moisture. And so the buyer knows exactly what we're getting. And so it may sound flippant, but it's almost the definition of terms. Where is the product and where does it need to go? It's a big opportunity.
I guess I've got a two-part question. One, we've had a really good discussion so far regarding the innovations of protein and palatability and nutrition, but my question is more concerned with farmers and growers and ranchers out there. What avenues are in place to get these ideas and thoughts to the farm level, to the farm gate? And also, are there resources out there now that make adoption of these new technologies, innovations, less costly, less riskier, logistics support, things like that, that the farmers and growers need to be considering if they're looking to reach out there and change the way that they do their business now?
You know, I made the comment earlier, I said I want to make a cautionary statement on pulling all this technology and innovation together and on a platform that's simple and scalable is a challenge with it. And one of the things that I find is I attend various functions, and the gentleman that just asked the question, he and I were at a Harvard seminar 8-9 years ago, and Unilever was up, and they were talking about sustainability and the requirements they were going to put on tea. And I asked, well, most of this tea is coming from where? And they said, India. And when the deal was over with, I asked, I said, who knows what you want to do other than you on it? And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's lost. It's not making it to the farm gate with it. And today, there are a lot of great concepts out there that don't get there. They don't have the channel to get there. We see ourselves, just like Barry and his group, I'm sure, see themselves. We see ourselves as playing a major role, and we do play a major role in that today. Look, these growers, they can't take every single concept that somebody has, even though everybody that has a concept thinks it's a great concept. You've got to pick and choose what'll work. You got to pick and choose what's actually doable with it, and we try to play that role. When I said 3,500 trusted agronomy advisors within our organization, that's part of what we do every day. Working with our customers is trying to pick and choose what'll work best, what'll work best on that farm, what'll work best on those soils, and those types of things. Very sure
So
you got it.
as a company, we established what is referred to as Indigo Research Partners. And it's a network of growers around around the world. And we work with them on their whole farm. And so what we do is we collect data off their whole farm. And then on 500 acres, we dedicate it to trying whatever innovation they're interested in, or whatever small startup or our own product we're working with. We want to understand what value it brings. That network is connected with a group of farmers around them, so the dissemination of information is quick, and we know real quickly whether something's working or not. This year we'll have 15 technologies that we're working on these farms that are not our own. And we have no problem declaring this drone is a piece of junk, or this drone brings a lot of value. We want to learn fast, we want to fail fast. What's interesting about this network of growers that we chose around the world, more than half of them have a direct to market on some part of their farm. They're selling some grain directly without going through a third party. And so we're learning systems through them while they're learning systems through us.
All right, we're getting the no more questions sign. I think that's what that means.
Something like this.
I saw
I think they meant, hopefully it was a response to your
That's
answer.
universal.
Okay, I got one other answer I could try.
All right. Good enough. Thanks to
Thank
everyone. We
you.
appreciate it. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it. Thanks.